Hello class. Today we're going to do lesson 7.3, which is on solving linear systems by adding or subtracting. So just to refresh our memory, in lesson 7.1, we learned how to solve systems by graphing. So that's when we literally, like on a coordinate plane, we would graph two lines and we would find where did they touch. That point of intersection was our xy point, our coordinate point, and that was the solution. In 7.2, we learned how to solve systems by using what's called the substitution method. All right, and that was when we would solve for x or y and plug it in for the other equation and then solve from there. Again, our answer would be a coordinate point. Well, today we're learning to solve by elimination. And again, our answer is going to be a coordinate point, an x and then a y, okay? And really what we are finding is we are finding that point where those two lines intersect. Even though we're going to do it a different way, the meaning is still the same. It's what is that intersection point. All right, so let's take a look at these steps to solve by using elimination method. The first step says add or subtract the equations to eliminate one variable. And the word eliminate really means to like get rid of, okay? So taking a look at our example 1, letter A, in this one we are solving by using the elimination method. So if I'm following step 1, I want to either add or subtract these two equations together so that one of the variables eliminates. Well, what I'm noticing here is that this first equation has a 5y, the second equation has a negative 5y. Those 5's are the same, meaning like they both have a 5 in them. And so I want to ask myself, I'm either going to add these two or I'm going to subtract them. So I have to ask myself, what is 5y plus negative 5y? Is that 0? Well, 5y plus negative 5y, yes, is 0. So we are going to add them together. Okay, so these two we are adding. That's what that plus means. Okay, if I were to do 5y minus negative 5y, 5y minus negative 5y would actually be a 10y, and that wouldn't eliminate one of the variables. It would actually get bigger. So we're going to add. So in math, taking a look at my first equation, I just have an x there. My hidden number is 1x. So 1x plus 4x is 5x's. Now I have 5y plus negative 5y, and we already said that that was 0. We're going to do the same thing with the 9 and the negative 14. So 9 plus negative 14 is a negative 5. So now we have 5x equals negative 5. We can just quickly solve for x. All right, how do you undo 5 times x? Well, you divide by 5. So x is equal to negative 1. Now that is part of our answer. Remember, our answer is going to be a coordinate point where we have the x and then the y. So we just solved the x, now we need to get the y. Well, step 2 says solve the resulting equation for the other variable. This is actually what we did in lesson 7.2. Not the full thing, but the second thing. So if we have an x is equal to something, we can plug this into either one of the two equations. So step 2 we already solved, but then step 3, substitute in either original equation to find the value. So I could plug this x equals to negative 1 into this first equation or the second one, it doesn't matter. I like to do the one with the smallest numbers. So if I'm looking here, you know, this x just has a 1, this has a 5y, and this one, it looks smaller, it looks simpler, but either one works. So if I were to plug it in for x, we have x which we just said was negative 1, plus 5y equals 9. All right, well, when we would solve, we want to get rid of that negative 1, so we would plus 1 to both sides. All right, so then those cancel. So now we have 5y is equal to 10. How do you undo 5 times y? You divide. So y is equal to 2. All right, so that's the other part of our answer. Plugging in 2 right there. So our answer is negative 1, 2. Okay, taking a look at letter B, we want to take a look at these two and we want to see, are we going to add or subtract them? So we're either going to add or subtract. Okay, now how do we find it? I'm looking at these two equations and I see that the top equation has a 3x and the bottom equation also has a 3x. So those look the same. So now I have to ask myself, if I did 3 plus 3, does that give me 0? No, it does not. If I did 3x minus 3x, does that give me 0? Yes, it does. So we are going to subtract those two equations. So like we said, 3x minus 3x is 0. Negative 4y minus 2y is a negative 6y. So we did this negative 4y minus 2y is negative 6y. And now we have 2 minus 26, which is a negative 24. Okay, how do you undo negative 6 times y? You divide by negative 6. All right, and if we do that, we should get y is equal to 4. Y is equal to 4, and that is half of the solution. So y is 4. I need to now find x. Okay, so I can plug this 4 either in for the top x or the bottom x. It doesn't matter. My hint to you is I like to find the one that looks easiest. And honestly, I think they look about the same. We'll do the top equation. So we have 3. Oops, and actually I just saw that I made a mistake. Sorry about that. So we are talking about plugging this 4 in for the y, not the x. Sorry about that. All right, so we're plugging that 4 in for the y. Okay, so still using the top equation, we have 3x minus 4, and instead of putting in the y, we just solved for y. We said that it was 4. And then that equals 2. Okay, negative 4 times 4 is a negative 16. So now we have 3x is 3x minus 16. Equals 2. Opposite of minus 16 is plus 16 on both sides. So now we have 3x equals 18. And how do you get rid of 3 times x? You divide by 3. So x is equal to 6. All right, so that is the second part of our answer. We would plug in 6 right up here for x. So this is our answer, the coordinate point 6, 4. All right, I will show you one more that looks very similar to these. All right, letter C. Okay, again, we're trying to figure out, are we going to add or subtract them? I noticed that the top equation has an 8x and the bottom equation has an 8x. So that is where I'm zeroing in. That's what I'm looking at. I'm either going to add or subtract. So I have to see negative 8x plus 8x, that actually is 0. So we are going to add these two together. All right, so negative 8x plus 8x is 0. 3y plus negative 6y is a, 3y plus negative 9y is a negative 6y. And 12 plus 12 is 24. Okay, now we have negative 6 times y. How do you undo times? You divide. So divide by negative 6. So we get y is equal to negative 4. And that is part of my answer, but not the whole thing. Okay, taking a look at these two, I think that this equation looks like there's a little bit less to do just because the y, it's 3y instead of negative 9y, but either equation works to plug it into. So I'm going to do negative 8x plus 3, and instead of writing y, I'm writing down what y is equal to, which is negative 4, and that equals 12. 3 times negative 4 is a negative 12. Okay, and how do you undo that constant, that plain number? What's the opposite of minus 12? Plus 12. So now we have negative 8x is equal to 24. How do you undo negative 8 times x? You divide by negative 8. So x is equal to negative 3, which that's what we plug in for the rest of our final answer. Negative 3, negative 4. Okay, letter D is just the same style. What I would like you to do is pause this video, give it a try on your own, and then check your answers with what you see in the teacher's notes. Okay, flipping to the back side of our notes for today, at the top there it says, hint, sometimes it is helpful to rewrite one of the equations so that the like terms are arranged in columns. So my hint to you is use standard form, which is where we have the x's. So oftentimes you'll see ax plus by equals c. So what that really means is you have the x's first, then you have plus or minus the y's, and then you have the equal sign, and then on the other side you have the plain numbers, the constants. Okay? So if it helps you, you could even write x, then plus or minus the y, equals, and then the constant, or you could write like the plain numbers. Yep. So that's really what we're talking about. So why is this helpful? Well, in example 2, it says solve the linear system using elimination. I have the x's, then the y's on the top equation, equals and plain number, but on the bottom, do you see how I have the y? I have the y, and then the equal sign, then the x's, and then the plain number. It's all in a different order. So what we can't just like add or subtract these two, because I can't take 6x and add or subtract the y. They don't look the same. And then I have an equals here, but I don't have an equals there, so it's all not in the right order. Okay, so what we do need to do is we need to rearrange that bottom equation. So I want to move this 6x, I want to move it to the other side. So how do I get rid of it or undo it? Well, this is a positive 6x right now. So how do you undo positive 6x? You minus 6x on both sides, so that these cancel. All right, and now can I do negative 6x and then plus y? I can't combine those, so I just have to write them just right out. And so I'm going to just choose to write this off to the side here. I have negative 6x plus y, which is really just 1y, equals negative 32. And I'm actually going to rewrite the top equation. I don't have to do anything to it, but I'm just going to rewrite it right on top of the other one, so that as we can see here, now I have the x's right on top of each other, I have the y's on top of each other, I have the equal signs right in a column, and I have the constants, the plain numbers, right on top of each other. So now I can decide, do I need to add or subtract? Okay, so I'm going to notice that the 6x on top and the negative 6x on the bottom, they look the same. due to there both being a 6 there. If I were to do, I have to decide, should I add or subtract them? Well, if I do 6x plus negative 6x, that gives me 0. So I am adding those two together. All right, so if I did that, the x's cancel. Now we have 7y plus, and that's a 1y. So 7y plus 1y is 8y. And 16 plus negative 32 is a negative 16. How do I get rid of that 8 times y? Well, I do the opposite. I divide by 8. So y is equal to negative 2. That's part of my answer. So y is negative 2. But now I have to solve for the x. I can plug it into any of those two equations. Actually, really the originals or the two that I wrote off to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plug it right in here for this equation. Doesn't matter which one I plug it in for, but that's the one I'm going to choose to do. So I have negative 6x plus 1y. Well, y we said was negative 2. Okay, how do I get rid of that plus a negative 2? Well, that's really the same thing. Plus a negative 2 is really the same thing as just saying minus 2. So, how do you get rid of minus 2? You plus 2. So now we have negative 6x equals negative 30. How do I get rid of negative 6 times x? You divide by negative 6. So x is equal to 5. So that is the other part to our answer. 5, negative 2 is our final answer for letter A. Okay, taking a look at letter B, the same concept now. I really do want my x's, then my y's, an equal sign, and then my just plain numbers. So looking at the top equation, I have x's, then y's, an equal sign, and then my plain number. So the top equation is good to go. Now looking at the bottom equation, that one is not good to go. I need to get this x, I need to move it to the other side. So that then I would have x, y, and then my plain number. Well, how do I get rid of or undo that x on that side? I would minus the x on both sides. So just like I did the last time, I'm going to write it off to the side. I cannot combine 5y minus x. So I'm just going to write the x first, then the 5y, and that equals 10. Why did I choose to write the x first? Well, it's because the top equation, if I just copy that down, has my x first. Okay. Now I need to take a look at these two and I need to decide, am I going to add or subtract them? So I'm really looking at this negative 5y and this 5y. So do I add or subtract? Negative 5y plus 5y is 0. So that means I add them together. Okay, so now we have 4x minus 1x, or excuse me, I should say 4x plus a negative 1x, which is 3x. And 5, well, and then if I did negative 5y plus 5y, we said that that was 0. So now we have 5 plus 10, which is 15. All right, how do you get rid of that 3 times x? You divide. So x is equal to 5. And that is half of my answer. So now I need to solve for y. Well, I can use any one of those equations. Okay, I'm just going to choose to, we'll just use this one right here. So this 5 is getting plugged in for the x. So we have negative x, or negative 5, plus 5y equals 10. All right, so we have negative 5. Let's kind of easier to just write that as just simply negative 5. How do you get rid of negative 5? You add 5. And I always want to get rid of that constant, the plain number, first, because then the y term gets left by itself. 10 plus 5 is 15. How do you get rid of 5 times y? You do the opposite of times. You divide by 5. So y is equal to 3. So putting the 3 right there where y should go, and this is my answer, 5, 3. All right, letter C is just the same. I'm noticing that the bottom equation has the x and then the y, the equal sign, and the constant, the plain number. That's what we want. So we really do want to move this 2x over to the other side so that it's before the x. How do you move that? How do you undo minus 2x? You plus 2x to both sides. So we are going to get 2x plus 7y equals 4, because those cancel. And the bottom equation, you don't have to do anything to it. It's just 2x plus y equals negative 8. All right, and from there you need to decide, do you add or subtract? I'm going to let you guys pause this video, go ahead and try this problem, and then you can always check your work on the teacher's notes. Okay, that is it for lesson 7.3. Thank you so much for watching, and see you.